what I wanted to talk to you about. I do a show for Comcast here about musicians and mental health issues,
Yeah.
and I was interested if we could talk a bit about that, about your lyrics and things like that, and how it pertains to certain subjects like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I know people ask you a lot about Iron Maiden and things like that. So maybe one of the songs that we could start with is 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Um, I'm kind of curious, like where you were when you wrote that song. Like, what was going through your mind?
Well, it's a true story. And at that time, things weren't going well in my career with Wolfsbane. And I, as most musicians do, at some point, I had to take a job. And I got home, I finished work at 2 a.m. And after all the dreams that I'd had and thinking that I was going to get somewhere and make a difference with my singing and my lyrics, then I was actually not getting anywhere and just worse off than I had been for quite a while. So that was it, really. And normally, I've always kept from the very early days a notebook, a notepad, a pencil and paper with me always, and always jotted down bits of ideas and then collected those so that if I was in a situation where we were in a rehearsal or wanted to have a jam through a new idea, then I had some lyric or something. And that was a very long time before I joined Iron Maiden. And I think I had that maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. And I sat down with Yannick Gers and I started going through all of these notes and little bits of paper that I had. And he was strumming on the guitar. And then I found this lyric, and that was the appropriate vibe, the appropriate feeling to go with the music that he had. And that was it. And it's just an ordinary situation that thousands and thousands of people find themselves in, not just musicians, but just people find themselves in a situation where they are not where they expected to be, and they're not where they wanted to be at that stage in their life. And that was it. Of course, when I was actually working on the song with Yannick Gers, I was in a totally different place. There I was, the lead singer of Iron Maiden. My dreams were coming true. I was getting somewhere. People were looking at my lyrics and asking what they were about. They were interested in the things that I was writing about. But at the time that I came up with that idea, when it presented itself to me and I caught it and wrote it down, nobody was interested in my lyrics. Nobody was interested in what I was writing about. So I just wrote, at that time, I was just expressing my own experience. And it's amazing that years and years later, there I am in a completely different situation, expressing my own feelings and doubts and fears about a situation I was in many years before.
It's an amazing song for me because I mean personally, I even printed out the lyrics because I there's some parts of it that really touched me so much that when I was going through such a dark period of time, I used to put it on and just scream the lyrics, just like "Here I am again," "Look at me again," and all this, and just like I remember, crying. It was a catharsis.
Well, you're not alone with that, Todd. Many, many fans that I see at my meet and greet, which up until now, before the virus, has always been free. Many fans that I've met have said that that is a favourite song of theirs, and said that they really identified with the emotion and the feeling of that song. So that's something, as a songwriter and as an artist, it's an incredible feeling, and it's very humbling to have people share that with me.
It's so amazing what you do. Really, I praise you. I really. Okay, so the next song I have here is "Look for the Truth," which it says here that you co-wrote that as well.
Yeah, that was another one around the same time that I was working on with Yannick Gers. And it's very uncomfortable, really, because it talks about telling the truth to yourself, finding the truth in your own life, and not allowing yourself to be in that spotlight, that haze, that narcissistic highlight, and coming to terms with where you are. And however great you think you are, however cool that you think you are, what are you really? Who are you really? And by your actions, how do you affect people? And so there's a certain amount of guilt associated with not being truthful. And that is what that song is about. That if you are honest, if I would be honest with myself, then it would hurt. And finding that truth from the darkness of telling lies and making things so, oh, well, this will be the easiest way out of this, instead of facing a conflict and facing a truth and having the argument that you should have, taking the consequences of your actions, then that is what Look for the Truth is about.
There's a line in it that I really love. In the house of my soul, in rooms of ugliness and cold, memories locked away, all the doubts and fears I never faced. Now they come again. I'm falling down to meet with them. Fear within us all, mine awake, and they stand up tall.
Yeah, the doubts and fears, the arguments you never had, the things that you never faced, that you have to go, well, this is who I am. This is my inadequacy, and this is my deficiency. This is the defect of my personality that I haven't faced up to. And
What
that's what that situation is about.
what would you say? Because I do a lot of self analysis myself, but when you say this sort of deficiency or any kind of thing that's going on, what did you feel was not right?
Well, I feel that because of, perhaps because of the difficulties I had as a child in school with dyslexia, and the way that it was treated then, it wasn't recognized then, when I was uh, in my first school and learning to read and write and spell and arithmetic. When I was there, then it was treated as laziness, not as a problem, a learning problem. And I'm very lucky that, in one way, that the form of dyslexia that I have is a mild form of dyslexia. And other people are much, much worse off than me. But I couldn't learn to spell, and it was very difficult for me to write. But I was lucky in that I could read, And later on, a teacher noticed that I could read, even though I couldn't write or spell, and they encouraged my reading, and in that way I could kind of keep up. But of course, I learned to be a great liar, to get out of homework, to make excuses for not doing homework, and all of that. And this got me all the way through school to the end. I haven't got any exams. I don't, everything I got is a fluke. So I don't have any qualifications at all. And I learned to lie very, very well. And because I became used to lying about homework, and it got me through situations in school and things like this, and because my dyslexia wasn't picked up till my teenage years, then that became a pattern then for my life. Instead of being truthful and facing situations, I would tell a lie about it. And that is something, as I learned, as I grew, as I became an adult, that is something that I started to realize was wrong and harmful. You have to tell the truth, unless it's something where your life is under threat by somebody, and telling a lie will get you out of that. You have to tell the truth. You have to. That is the way that we develop true character and strength of character. And I didn't know that at that time. And it's something that I have learned. And as I've developed as an artist, then look for the truth is also something I try to do in my work with my lyrics. I'm looking for a truth, whether I'm writing about a movie or a true story or my own feelings or a story that I've written. I'm looking for some element of truth that can be recognized by another human being. And even if English isn't your first language, then I'm trying to find a way to place the voice and the music, so that even if you don't know what the meaning of the words is, you feel a meaning from the way the voice and the music fits together and is presented to you. So look for the truth was a part of a growing experience, a thing from situations that I had in my life, that I realized, well, I've got to face up to these things. And it's a thing that's been ongoing. And when we talk about self-improvement, and people like Tony Robbins come to mind and all of that, but real self-improvement is just as simple as trying to be truthful in your dealings with people in life. And it's not always easy, depending on your background, but I think it's very, very worthwhile, because that is what develops strength of character, and it's something I strive to do in my daily life.
Beautiful. Let's skip ahead to your solo career, which is quite extensive. How okay, the song "Soundtrack of My Life" from Blood and Belief 2004. You have a line in here. You have I think it's the second verse. Trying to be true to yourself, surviving your own mental health. But pharmaceuticals today are not what you thought they'd be. Seeking your own oblivion, but you are not the only one. Join the queue and stand in line. If there's no victim, there's no crime. Could you tell?
Well, it's a truth about the situation that I found myself in. Oblivion is alcohol, because I would regularly use alcohol to soak away my problems. It's not good to use alcohol that way. I'm not condoning it, but that's the situation that I was in back then. That the miserable situations I found myself in and the loneliness and darkness, I would use alcohol as an anesthetic. So that was the oblivion. And of course, that is almost a state of ecstasy, that oblivion, because voices go away, everything for a few moments will disappear. And when you're in a situation that you will drink yourself to be oblivious and unconscious. So the other side of that is a place that you don't want to go, because it's waking up and there's all your problems, and perhaps quite a few more caused by what you did when you decided to soak your consciousness and responsibility and allow that animal brain to take over. So that's what it was about, really. And if you are doing it to yourself, perhaps you're not a victim. So it's not criminal. There's no real law against drinking too much alone. Being alone and being drunk in your own private house or room or whatever, there's no law against that I'm aware of. And so there is, if there's no, if you're not a victim, if you don't call yourself a victim, it's not a crime. So that's what those lyrics are about. It was a very dark time in my life. Blood and Belief album. I was losing everything, losing my home. I'd been lied to by the record company. They blackmailed me and withheld money that was due in that was due to me under contract, and all kinds of problems, and then all sorts of personal difficulties as well. And through all of that, then there seemed to be one thing that I could cling to, and that was music, because it seemed to be away from all of that, a way to express my feelings, but also another place that I could immerse myself in. And I think for all of us that love music, then those songs that come to us, those albums that come to us at certain periods of darkness, and I'm not saying just my albums, any album by any artist that you like, that comes to you, that you find in a period, you will attach more of your own emotion to than perhaps the artist intended. And it becomes those songs that get you through, that you give that meaning to, become the soundtrack to your life. And I think that's true for all of us that love music.
Sure. But what I wanted to really ask you, it says, but pharmaceuticals today are not what you thought they'd be.
Well, I went to the doctor. I was taken to the doctor by my first wife, who said, this is not right. You know, I didn't want to get out of bed. I was crying most days and in a terrible state, and still trying to make the Silicon Messiah album. And she said, this isn't right. Something's not right. This just is not right. We're going to the doctors. So we went to the doctors, and then the doctor asked me a few questions. Do you feel like this? This? Yeah, I do. Yeah. He said, that's depression. You are suffering from depression. And suddenly it was, wow, I never even thought about that. I didn't really know anything about depression. I'd heard of it. I didn't really know what it was. And then he put me on medication, and I started to research depression. What is depression? What are the treatments for depression? And found out about B vitamins and exercise and different things and all of that. But I was on that medication for a very long time, but it didn't cure me.
Did it help?
And didn't it helped in some way. It did help in some ways. It leveled me out. You know, the the thing about, if you get the right medication, there's many different ones available to
Right.
treat depression, and certainly 10 years on medication, I benefited from that because I didn't have these horrific lows, and I didn't have these manic states bouncing up and down in a few seconds, from utterly miserable to completely euphoric and back to misery again. So I was balanced out a lot by that medication, and it did help in many ways, but it's not the cure
Right.
that I expected it to be. Because, of course, there's much more to what I was going through than than what medication can do. I needed to see a psychiatrist. I needed to see a counselor. I needed to address issues in my life and my personality that I'd put away in those places. And so that was the truth. And that was many years later before really I was able to get to a place where I could address those issues and look at them, before I found cognitive therapy and managed to have sessions with the therapist. And that was the big turning point for my mental health. I've been up and down and functioning and all of that, and getting through many situations. Really, it was after that that third lot of counselling, and then seeing a therapist, and I'd found out about cognitive therapy, and I thought that sounds like the one
Mhm.
that would work for me. So I asked the doctor if it was available, and I was very lucky. Not much, but you could have a short course of therapy, cognitive therapy, CBT, on the National Health Service, and that was what really started to turn things around for me. But that was like the darkest period of my life.
Well, really glad you got through it and that there were the tools of that kind to be around. That's good. Would you encourage others to get help as well?
Well, I think this is the problem with mental health issues, that it hasn't been given the same status as cancer. So, with the technology available, what you could in fact do, and some studies do it, you can get into the the scanners and all of this, and have the electronic imaging of the brain and all of this, and see what your brain that's all possible. It's all completely possible, but it's not widely available or used as a first line. So you can see inside somebody's brain. The equipment is available to do that, but it's not the first thing. And it would be great if it was.
Like an
If the
MRI?
first, yeah, like MRI and those things, if you go and the first thing is, okay, depressed, let's look at your brain function. Let's look at your brain chemistry. Let's see which bits are, and you can actually see inside in your brain, and you go, well, that bit right there, that's totally messed up. It's not working at all. And you can also go, well, actually, you know what? Most of your brain function is really good. There's no good reason that there's no chemical reason or physical reason for you to be in this state. So it's something psychological and mental. And we start now with the therapy and with these kind of drugs. And if it had that status, people would be through mental health in control of their own mental health, and we wouldn't have, I think anyway, I don't think we would have the level of male suicide that we have, because you could go, okay, it's that bit, yeah, and we can see this, we know it's this. But those things, people study the brain and brain things, but that's not widely available. That's not for everybody. So I think that's it. But for me, medication worked for a long time. And in the end, I needed to have therapy. And I would say, if you have the opportunity, and I'm aware that millions of people who suffer don't have the opportunity to engage with a professional therapist. If you have the opportunity, then do it. Get therapy, get a professional therapist, psychologist, talk to somebody, have a course of treatment, and start, because no one really chooses to suffer from depression. It's, if you had a switch to go, oh, I feel a bit down today, chink, oh, no, I feel better now, you'd flick that switch every single time. That's what a friend of mine who suffers said to me. Well, you don't choose it, it just comes on you, and then suddenly there you are. I was like, oh no. So yeah, I'd say there's less stigma now. And also our society is a different shape to what it was for our grandparents. You know, bigger families, more family orientated things, more connections with people, more things. People were melancholy and suffered in the days of our grandparents and before. Of course they did. But there were also, in some ways, family structures and different things that perhaps helped a little bit more. And so things weren't quite
The
so.
family support system.
Yeah, I've been very lucky in my life. I've my in my first wife taking me originally to the doctor, so I learned at that visit. Well, actually, he said, "How long have you felt like this?" I said, "Most of my adult life." I remember being in, going to these dark places and being really like this and all of that. And I started looking at all the episodes in my past. I thought, I've always suffered from this kind of thing. I've always had this. And I've gone through these downs. I've been in these incredible places with wonderful people and been completely miserable and inside myself, and missed these great experiences that I could have had that were available to me because I was depressed. So that was the thing I really wanted to do. So now, once I knew what it was, and I found that you could do something about it, I wanted to do something about it.
Wonderful. Did they diagnose you as bipolar or severely depressed?
Severe clinical depression. I was on the edge of bipolar with the tests that they gave me. Later on, when I went to see another doctor and they gave me some tests, they said, "You're not bipolar. You're on your way there, but you're not bipolar. This is clinically depressed and we can treat this."
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So, the next song that I have for you that I really love so much, it's called One More Step from the King of Metal album, 2012.
Then it's also
On Rush
on,
Holiday.
Yeah, it's also on my Russian Holiday EP, which has now been become a part of my big classical acoustic album.
This is something that you're working on now?
No, it's just I reissued. I didn't. Russian Holiday is a great recording,
Yes.
but I wanted to do more with classical acoustic with Thomas, and I thought I don't want two acoustic albums in my catalogue, so we wrote some more songs and made that
Because there's
into,
December Wind,
into an
also
album. I'm
December
sorry?
Wind, December Wind as well.
Yes, yeah, into the December Wind album. And so the December Wind album then kind of tells a story on its own. And towards, I haven't lost anything, but I don't want to repress Russian Holiday. I wanted to make that part of one thing. So you can buy the December Wind album and you
Mhm.
have the whole thing. It's just one thing that you can dip in and out of when you want to. If you're in the mood to listen to classical acoustic and a closeness of the voice that isn't always available when we do our full metal songs, then so it's done very well, and I'm very, very pleased with the December Wind album, and particularly the song One More Step evolved from the King of Metal album. I started it off right here on my piano
Mm-hmm.
and with some
That's
lyrics and just going basically through it. And Thomas was here at the time and we were working on the new songs. And he said, well, try this chord. He said, well, actually, I'll take over because the way that you hit in the piano, you're going to break it because you're doing it so hard. So, and we just brushed it up and then we put it on King of Metal and he didn't really have the impact that I wanted. Something wasn't, there was something missing on
something
the
was
King of Metal version. So I said to Thomas, let's have another go at this. But I think it's going to work better with the classical guitar than it did with the piano. I imagined that it would work great with the piano because I came up with the idea on piano, but it didn't. It was okay. And then the version with the classical guitar, that really came together. And that's big. And I've done it many times live as well and different variations of it. And for some people, it's a very important song. It's one of those songs with a lyric that I wrote to myself. So that if I'm singing the song, I'm telling the truth. And I'm also saying to myself, remember the darkness and the horrible things that you've survived. And remember that you can get up, that it's only getting up that's important. It doesn't matter about anything else. And so it's something that I wrote to myself, really. And it's really lovely that so many people have identified with that and enjoyed the message of that song.
it's extremely heartfelt. I have to say. Okay. There were four songs on the album Promise and Terror that have a theme. The last four songs.
Yeah.
I have um, Surrounded by Sadness, The Trace of Things That Have No Words, Letting Go of the World, and Comfortable in Darkness. What were those about?
Well, it's grief. It's the phases of grief that I went to when my second wife died. So
I'm
in
very sorry
that
about that.
grieving process that everybody goes through, perhaps to varying degrees. I was lucky in some ways that I had people around me that supported me. And I think what is important, I see now, and it's a thing that I did at the time, is to allow yourself to grieve, to admit that something is the most horrible thing that could happen to you, and to feel that, allow yourself to feel it. For me, I saw grief as something that must be endured, experienced, because if you don't, if I didn't get through it, if I didn't experience it, if I didn't accept
Hmm.
that horrible, horrible situation, if I didn't accept it, then a part of it, a part of that darkness would stay with me, not accepting it, and that would poison me because I'd seen it in other people, and I'd seen people with grief get cancer and lose their lives, and people suffer terrible illness after something so difficult as losing a partner. And I thought, I'm not going to leave this in. I don't care how I look. I don't care what people think of me. I don't care how it seems to the outside world. This is my whole life, my whole future that I thought I would have gone, completely disappeared. And so I don't really care what people think. I'll deal with it how I deal with it. And grief is not just missing the person and losing the person, it's losing your future. And whenever we have these big changes in life where something happens that's not a choice, where you are looking at a situation just like now with the virus taking away gigs that we thought we would go to and things that we thought we would do, but that's gone now. A future that you thought you would have is no longer there, and you are facing uncertainty and have to find a way through. And for me, that's what grief is. You have to grieve those situations. You have to experience that sadness. It's pointless for me anyway. It can only be personal. For me, it's pointless to go, oh, well, just stiff up a lip, get through it. No, no, don't have, no, just be completely miserable. Let the tears out, cry your heart out, and on the other side, that's the darkness and the sadness starting to leave your body. And after a while, perhaps you can start to take your first steps towards another future, to imagine that there is a day after this day and a day after that day, and not to really go, okay, well, that's where I'm going, but just go, okay, one step to that. Just get through today, get through this minute, get through this hour, get through this day. That's another day I've got. That's it. So, and that's grief, I think. And
Yeah.
it's a thing because perhaps it's a mental thing that people are uncomfortable talking about grief. And the only people that I found that I could really talk to about the way I felt was someone else that I knew who had been through a very similar situation and had that kind of loss in their life at a similar time to it happened to me. And we could sit down and talk and say, I felt like this. Yeah, I know. Oh, isn't that weird? Yeah, but oh, did you? Yeah, I felt like that too. And start to feel that there is a normal within that thing. But if you don't know anybody that has been through that and you haven't got anybody to talk to about that, then it can feel very weird. And that's unfortunate.
Well, I had a very serious loss in my life as well. When I was 12 years old, my father died unexpectedly, and that's what led me to get into music so hardcore that when I was 15 years old, I actually sat down with every single Iron Maiden record, including The X Factor, and learned it by ear. While everybody else was out doing drugs and hanging out at the mall, I learned the entire catalog on bass. So I just wanted to tell you that.
Well, it's very good for mental health to learn an instrument and also to learn a language.
Yeah. Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
No.
Okay, yeah, 'cause I only met you twice, and you're fantastic. I mean, you're just one of the greatest human beings to meet as far as a rock entity is concerned, you know. And it was always great, and I always wanted to interview and talk about these things with you. But I just knew it wasn't the appropriate situation at a venue to dive deep into these things. So I thought, okay, I'll wait. I'll just wait. I'll keep waiting. Anyway. There's a song called "While You Were Gone," which is on the, I can tell you, "While You Were Gone," "The Man Who Would Not Die," which is a perfect title because I think that really explains you very, very well.
Well, that is just a love song. And anyone who has experienced deep, true love in their life will understand what it means when their partner is absent for a few days. And that was the inspiration. My wife was away for a few days. She had a conference to go to and some work related thing. And we hadn't been apart for a long time. And there I was in our apartment on my own for a few days for the first time. And I realized how strong my feelings were, but also I realized that I'd changed, that I wasn't the man I was before. And that's what that song is about, that deep and true, real love that I was fortunate enough to experience.
Was it the same person you lost?
Yes, my second wife.
Debbie was her name.
Yeah.
Yes. Um, okay, there's a song called "At the End of the Day," which is really one of my favorites.
Yeah, that is one of those things that I had for a long time. This start, this beginning of this lyric, it was just a few words that I wrote down one night to kind of, well, one of these truth moments where
Yeah. What does
I had not been loyal to whatever it is that gives you inspiration and ideas. As an artist, I know, and I knew back then, that was in the Wolfsbane days that I wrote that lyric, that if the idea comes to you, and every artist knows this, you must wake up and you must write it down. You must record it. You have to catch that idea when it comes, because it's just like a butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
Butterflies you see on a summer's day, certain weather, and then you won't see them again. You don't know when that idea will come, and it will never come again. And so that is what it is about catching important moments and cherishing these beautiful moments and these gifts of inspiration. And that's what you should be doing. And the things that you don't do, and then you ask, what was it for? What did it mean? I didn't catch them. Or if so, that's what it is. But it came from a lyric that I started years and years ago, like 10 years before. And there was a bit of music. I think Nico Bermudez had it. And I said, you know what? I think these words are going to fit with that. And it came up and everybody got together. And then Jace Edwards was producing that part of the album, and he did a great job on the production, and it came together in a way that I never expected, but I was so pleased with the way that it came together.
I think it starts, I built a rod, it was for my own back. I love that
Yeah.
line.
So that's your expectation. You have this expectation. You expect that you can do this thing and these values, and then you beat yourself up with those values. And the failure to meet the expectation that you had of yourself, that is the rod that you make for your own back. The biblical rod that spare the rod, spoil the child. That's the rod that we're talking about. That you beat yourself up about these things.
Yeah, I liken that song a lot to 2 a.m. where it's sort of this sort of existential questioning. What was it for? What does it mean at the end of the day? What is it for? Look at me. Who am I? What's going on? Anyway, okay. So last question is "Endless Sleep." It's a song that was on the Night That Will Not Die, and that's a heavy song. That's a really heavy song.
Yeah, that was a song that I wish I'd never recorded now. It was something I was feeling at the time, and the lyrics came to me and the music came together, and I really wanted to do it at the time, but now I wish I hadn't.
I
It,
understand.
because it's about when my wife was ill in hospital. So it, yeah, it's a song I wish that I just kept completely for myself and never recorded. Really, I don't think I should have expressed those feelings now, looking back. But it's out there, so that's it.
I understand. Good. So that brings us to you recently released a live album. You have a couple of live albums. There's Live and Friends in 2019 and then Live in Czech 2020, which is fantastic. I think it's a double CD and it's on Spotify.
Yeah, I wanted for many years to do the studio album, the tour, and at the end of the tour, when the songs are really familiar and they start to have their own character, they've grown and you're very familiar with them, they're good friends, just and you know them almost as well as your old songs, then record that. So at the beginning, you've got the studio album, you've got the tour. Any fans that came to see you on the tour then have a really nice recording of the set list that they saw. And anybody that doesn't see you on the tour also has an impression, an idea of the energy and the way that the set went on the tour. I wanted to do that for many years, but I just couldn't get people to support that idea. And when I started working with the manager that I have now and with Chris Appleton, then
Great
I
band.
told them this idea. I said, well, this is what I want to do. You know, previously in the bad old days, managers would say, oh, well, you don't make much money off live albums. And I'm like, well, if you're not making a loss, why can't we just do it? Because it's something good to do and it feels good and you want to do it. And it's artistically, you feel that you want to do it. Does it matter? It's not making a loss. It doesn't matter that it doesn't make a lot of money. It pays for itself. So why not do it? And when I started working with this manager and Chris Appleton, then I said, well, this is what I want to do. Beginning of the tour, the studio album, this. I said, yeah, okay. I was like, wow. And then as the idea became more concrete, I wanted to show the different things I do. So Live in France is a big room with a barrier and quite a big gig for me that I do. And Live in Czech is one of the smaller, more intimate rooms that I do, and one of the smaller stages. They both have a certain energy to them that is specific to them. And the French fans sing in different parts of the songs to the Czech fans, and they're different albums with some of the bigger songs from the trilogy on Live in Brno. So I'm happy with the way that it's turned out, and I hope that it's an album that you can maybe put the headphones on, or if you're alone with the hi-fi, and you can just tweak it up a little bit with thinking that nobody's gonna come around to disturb you, then maybe it's one of those albums you can enjoy really as a live album. And I think we did great versions of the songs, and we were lucky in both times that we had 2 nights at each venue. So I'm really pleased with it. I don't know if we'll do another live album for quite a while now, because it was they've been good to do, and I think when we feel we have another interesting, meaningful set list that we want to record, that was when we will do another one. But I'm so pleased with the energy. Really, I didn't make the album. The fans made the album. That's the way I look at it. My fans came, they were familiar with the songs, they sang along, they put the energy into the album. So both of those albums, Live in France and Live in Czech, they're made by the fans, and the core and most important ingredient is the energy of my fans.
Absolutely. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic, Blaze. Thank you so much for taking the time. It really means a lot. I guess I think I probably had maybe a couple of other questions, but maybe I'll have to wait for another time. Thank you so much, and I'm so glad that you were able to speak so openly about these mental health issues and things like that.
Okay, Todd. Well, good luck with your show. Wish you all the best and stay safe.
Oh, the question. What are you working on now?
Well, this is the irritating thing, because we have a long schedule and we have a long lead up, so we plan things well in advance. That's how I was able to do Infinite Entanglement as 3 albums in 3 years with 3 tours, and a 4th tour to go with it. And we already planned right now to be working on the new studio album. The next release that I'm doing is a vinyl of 10th Dimension and the anniversary tour to go with that. But at this time, in all the spaces that we have, between the summer festivals, we were always going to be working on new songs and on my Infinite Entanglement book. So I was supposed to be at home anyway, working at home. I've been on tour forever and all of that. And then the government say, you should work at home now. And I'm like, I'm already working at home. Now somebody's telling me to do something I'm already doing. The most annoying thing probably that you could possibly experience. I'm like, you're telling me to do what I'm already doing. Now I don't want to do that. I want to go out. So that's been a challenge. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. I needed a big break between writing part 3 of the trilogy because we use so much energy creatively and physically to get those albums on time, to get them done, that I really needed a fresh place to start from. And I'm very lucky that my manager found a way to get me to this place and say, okay, yeah, I did not want to bring out an album that was rushed and that I had to just get an album out. I wanted to bring out an album with time to go, okay, I can leave that song alone for a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, and then come back to it. And how do I feel? And polish a lot of things. And this is what's worked for me in the past when I've had time to do that. So that's what I'm doing right now. It's a very long process. It's intense at times, but it's writing those lyrics, working on the music, and trying to get this magical triangle where the music and the lyric and the melody express the same feeling. And when that works, when you find that place, that is a song for me that really lives and is something to be so proud of. But that is not an easy thing for me anyway. It's a constant search and sometimes a battle to find a way to get these 3 elements to come together.
Amazing. So in this lockdown, there's a lot of musicians out there. If somebody wants to do, let's say, a collaboration with Blaze Bayley on vocals for the chorus, how do they go about doing that?
You go to blazebayley.net and you get in touch with my manager and you book the session. And then when I'm available between all different things that I'm doing, then I fit in guest vocals for different people. So some of them are just amazing, the things that people send me, and it's a real pleasure to do them. And the ones that aren't so amazing, they're always really fun to do. But one thing that I have changed now since when I started, I enjoy doing guest vocals and I really enjoy that part of it because it's nice to do something different. But one thing that I've changed is now I do have the final say on the lyric, because I used to get lyrics that came through that perhaps weren't that great. And sadly, people thought that I wrote the lyric. And I'm like, no, this is somebody else's song and I'm just a guest vocal on this. And so I think, and sometimes people just don't know English very well. And what I've come across in many situations is someone who doesn't have English as their first language really loves the sound of this English phrase and these English words, and they go, oh, this is great. And then they send it to you and you go, well, actually in English, that's really dumb. But you don't know that because you haven't got any English friends to tell you that is really dumb. And I'm sorry about that, but I'm telling you, this is really dumb. Try this. And so that's what I do now. I spend much more time on each guest vocal, and I really try and look at the whole song and kind of do a small production with it as well. But I really enjoy doing it, and people hire me just to sometimes to talk, sometimes to just sing a chorus, sometimes to do a whole song. So it's fun to do that. It is something that I really enjoy doing. And during the lot, we did a few. We did a few last year, a couple so far. We have another, I think, 3 or 4 to do scheduled this year, which I hope we're going to be able to fit in with the restrictions.
Yeah, it's very fun. I was even thinking of writing an album, sort of along the lines of something called the Y Factor, and I would get the money together and then see if.
Well, I would say to you that the single most important thing about music is the collaboration and the fun of working with other people. So if you have friends that are into music, it shouldn't really be about being famous or the normal expectation of being success, selling millions of copies. What the real achievement is to have something that you feel proud of, that when your friends come round, you can go, oh, have you heard this band? And you put your own album on and they go, oh, this is good. Who's that? It's me. And that's it. That should be it. That should be enough. And I really think that, in my life, I've been very ambitious and single-minded, and I've got where I wanted to go. And I've also paid the price of that. And what is sad is sometimes people think things are only worth doing if you're going to be really famous for it. That's not true. Things are worth doing just because they're fun and good, and it's very satisfying to do something. You don't have to have a big success with a song, but if you wrote a song that you like and you can sing to your girlfriend or your partner or your friends, that's enough. It really is enough. You don't have to be good. You just have to enjoy it. You don't have to be a great musician. You just have to enjoy it. You don't have to learn to be the world's best singer. You just have to enjoy singing. And that, for me, that's enough.
Yeah.
You don't have to get anywhere. Music should just be about, or could just be about, enjoying music for the sake of it.
Great message. And A Miracle Away is one of my favorite collaborations.
That was one of my first one, and it's still one of the best.
So good. So good. Blaze, thank you. I wish you good health and all the best to you and your band and family.
Okay, so you too, mate.
Take care.
Good luck with your program.
Thanks, man. Cheers.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.